Imagine a world where your electricity was free as early as 1875. No wires, no monthly bills, and no burning coal. But the man who unlocked that secret didn't become a billionaire. He became a ghost. In the late 19th century, the patent office wasn't just a record of progress. It was a morgue for ideas that were too efficient for the people in power. We're talking about engines that ran on water and light bulbs designed to last forever. Inventions so revolutionary they didn't just fail. They were hunted down and scrubbed from the history books. Today, we're peeling back the soot of the Victorian era to uncover the brilliance they tried to bury. And trust me, number 5 is the exact reason free energy was buried, and you are still paying for power today. Hit subscribe to join our search for the truths they buried. Number 1, the man who tuned the universe. Let's start in 1872, inside a dimly lit, soot-stained workshop in Philadelphia. Meet John Worrell Keely, a man who claimed to have discovered the holy grail of physics. He didn't want your coal, and he certainly didn't want your wood. Keely claimed he could pull a 30-car freight train from New York to San Francisco using nothing but the vibratory energy of a single pint of water. It sounds like a bad magic trick from a street performer, doesn't it? But the Wall Street elites weren't laughing. They were reaching for their checkbooks. Keely demonstrated a machine that didn't just run. It screamed with a power no one could explain. He would play a single note on a silver flute, and a massive iron engine would roar into life, generating 50,000 pounds of pressure out of thin air. He called it etheric force. For 20 years, Keely kept the world's most powerful bankers on a leash, promising a world of free, infinite energy. He showed them heavy metal spheres that drifted towards the ceiling like soap bubbles when he hummed a specific frequency. The coal barons of the 1870s were sweating through their silk suits. If Keely was right, their empires were about to turn into literal dust. But then, in 1898, Keely suddenly died, taking his vibratory secrets to the grave. When investigators raided his lab, they claimed they found proof of a hoax, hidden tubes of compressed air buried beneath the floorboards. The media branded him the greatest con man in history, and the public moved on. Case closed, right? Well, not exactly. The compressed air systems they found were physically incapable of producing the massive power outputs witnessed by engineers for decades. It was as if someone had decorated the crime scene to make sure no one ever looked into Keely's theories again. The blueprints for his most advanced resonators, they didn't go to his family. They were acquired by a private entity and haven't been seen in over a century. Keely was buried, and with him, the dream of a world that didn't need to burn for its power. Number 2, the ice from fire. Imagine standing in the center of the 1878 Paris World Fair. While everyone else is obsessed with soot, smoke, and the roar of coal engines, you're staring at a massive shimmering golden dish. This was the Sun engine, the brainchild of a humble math professor named Augustin Mouchot. He didn't need coal. He didn't need wood. He just needed the sky to be clear. As the sun hit that polished bowl, something miraculous happened. A boiler at the center began to hiss, and within minutes, Mouchot did something that broke the brains of every Victorian scientist present. He produced a massive block of ice in the middle of a blistering August heat wave. Fire from the sky creating ice on the ground. It was the ultimate irony, and for a moment it looked like the age of coal was dead before it even started. Mouchot proved we could have had solar-powered cities before the first light bulb was even patented. But the coal barons weren't about to let a math teacher ruin their monopoly. In a move that feels suspiciously modern, a massive, convenient crash in coal prices made Mouchot's invention look like a financial disaster overnight. The government, under immense pressure from industrial lobbyists, declared the Sun engine unnecessary and pulled every cent of funding. Mouchot died in poverty, and his revolutionary designs were quietly tucked away into a lost government archive. We could have skipped an entire century of pollution, but the people who owned the mines decided it was better to keep us in the smoke. And speaking of things that vanish in the smoke, number 3 involves a secret so big it would have made the telegraph look like a toy. Number 3, the ghost signal of 1872. In 1872, a dentist from Virginia named Marlon Loomis walked up a mountain with 2 kites and a dream that should have been impossible. He didn't want to pull teeth, he wanted to pull the world together. Loomis had discovered something that defied the laws of Victorian science: wireless communication. Using nothing but copper-threaded kites and the natural static electricity in the atmosphere, he sent a signal between 2 mountaintops 14 miles apart. No batteries, no miles of expensive copper telegraph lines, just the air itself acting as a conductor. He had effectively invented the radio 20 years before Guglielmo Marconi was even a household name. Imagine the panic in the boardrooms of Western Union. They had just spent millions stringing wires across the wilderness, and here was a man claiming the sky was his circuit board. Loomis rushed to Washington, D.C., patent in hand, begging for a $50,000 grant to build a communication network that would span the Atlantic. The Loomis aerial telegraph bill actually passed in 1873, signed by President Grant himself. But then the panic of 1873 hit, a financial collapse that conveniently targeted the exact funding Loomis needed. The money vanished, and Loomis was left to rot in the history books as a delusional dreamer. He died broke, but modern engineers who have tested his schematics found something chilling. His kites didn't just send signals, they tapped into a layer of the atmosphere that could have provided free global energy. The Copper Kings didn't just stop the radio, they stopped us from ever needing a power line again. But if you think a wireless world was a threat, wait until you see what was hiding in the basement of a New York subway. Number 4, the secret beneath Broadway. Imagine walking down Broadway in 1870. Above ground, the city is a suffocating nightmare of horse manure, coal smoke, and gridlock. But 50 feet below your boots, a secret was breathing. Alfred Ely Beach was a man who hated the chaos of the city, and he hated the corrupt politicians who ran it even more. So he did something legally and physically impossible. He spent $350,000 of his own money to build a subway in total, terrifying secrecy. He didn't use steam engines that would choke passengers with soot. He used the atmosphere itself. A massive 48-ton fan pushed a luxurious velvet-lined car through a tube like a message in a pneumatic bottle. It was silent. It was clean. It was the future of human travel, delivered 34 years before the official New York subway even broke ground. When the secret was finally revealed, the public was obsessed. Hundreds of thousands of people flocked to the underground station, which looked more like a palace than a transit hub, complete with a grand piano and a goldfish pond. But there was one man who couldn't let a clean future exist: William Boss Tweed. Tweed ran the city's political machine with an iron fist. He couldn't squeeze a single cent of graft from a project he didn't control. He used his political muscle to choke the funding and bury the project alive. The tunnel was bricked up, the station was sealed, and the luxury car was left to rot in the pitch-black silence. It was completely forgotten for decades until construction crews accidentally smashed through a wall in 1912. They found a ghost station, chandeliers still hanging from the ceiling, waiting for passengers who would never arrive. We could have had a clean pneumatic world. Instead, we got a century of smog, grease, and iron. But even a buried city isn't as dangerous as the invention that threatened to change the human body forever. Number 5. The light that never failed. In 1874, years before Thomas Edison became a household name, a Russian engineer named Alexander Lodygin did the impossible. He created an incandescent lamp that didn't just work, it lasted. While Edison would later struggle with scorched bamboo filaments, Lodogin was already using specialized carbon rods in a vacuum. His bulbs could burn for thousands of hours without flickering out. But here is the dark irony. A light bulb that doesn't break is a disaster for a businessman. If you sell a bulb that lasts forever, you only make one sale. If you sell a bulb that dies in 6 months, you've created a customer for life. Investors saw Lodogin's brilliance not as progress, but as a threat to the emerging power monopolies. His funding was choked out, his lab was dismantled, and the world was gifted a version of the light bulb designed to fail. Which brings us to the final and perhaps most dangerous secret of the 1870s, the bioelectric resonator. In the late 1870s, pioneers were discovering that specific electrical frequencies could allegedly neutralize pathogens in the human body. It was a primitive version of what we now call electromedicine, a field that promised to cure without pills or expensive surgeries. But as the pharmaceutical industry began its meteoric rise, these machines weren't just ignored, they were confiscated. Patents were bought by chemical giants and buried in vaults, while the inventors were branded as quacks and driven into exile. We look back at the 1870s as a time of steam, soot, and primitive candles. But the truth is far more haunting. We didn't lose these inventions because they didn't work. We lost them because they worked too well for the people who wanted to keep us paying. History isn't a straight line of progress, it's a gated road, and the keys are held by those who profit from the status quo. Next time you look at your utility bill or replace a burnt-out bulb, remember the ghosts of 1870. They didn't just fail to change the world, they were stopped from changing yours. That's all for today. If you love discovering the dark side of history they tried to erase, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell.